Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be field stripping and cleaning my AR-15. Now I just cleaned it after my last shooting, so we're just going to be doing a very basic cleaning today. Today I'm using the Winchester cleaning kit, which is a very nice kit. It's very portable, comes in this hard case. The only thing I do not like is the cleaning rod. It comes with a 3-piece cleaning rod. Now, a lot of people advise against 3-piece cleaning rods because they are easily damaged just because they are 3 pieces. And if the cleaning rod is damaged or bowed, then and you continue to use it, you don't replace it, then you run the risk of damaging the interior of your barrel. Now, it's actually suggested that you use a single piece nylon coated or coated with some similar material cleaning rod, which you can usually pick up at Walmart for about $5. The coating will protect the barrel from the metal of the cleaning rod itself. Other than that, the kit's very nice. It comes with various brushes and everything else that I need, including jags, which unfortunately are plastic jags. But I don't really use jags all that often, so I'm not too worried about it. I'm also going to be using Remington Rem Oil, M-Pro7 Gun Cleaning Oil, and M-Pro7 Cleaning Solution. I have a silicone cloth for the barrel and cotton swabs for tiny places and tight areas. So, unfortunately, I do not have a 1-piece cleaning rod yet, so I'm going to have to use this 3-piece cleaning rod, but I am very particular about my cleaning rod, so this is in good condition and isn't damaged in the slightest bit, so I feel pretty confident about it. If it ever does become damaged, I will discard it. I just haven't gotten around to buying a single-piece rod yet, though it is on my wish list. I'm using a 22 caliber cleaning brush. Oops, forgot to. I'm going to be using a 22 caliber cleaning brush and a 204 caliber wire brush. For some reason, the 22 caliber wire brush seems like a very tight fit, and I don't really want to run the risk of damaging my rifling or my barrel, so I'm going to be using a 204. It seems to do a pretty good job, especially with the M-Pro7 cleaning solution. It seems to get all the grit out of the barrel, and my barrel is actually pretty clean and pretty smooth, so it works. So this is my AR-15. Now, to clean it, you're going to want to completely separate the upper and lower receivers. So the first thing you do is make sure that the chamber is empty, which it is. You're going to pull on the takedown pin and the pivot pin, and then separate the upper and lower receiver. Then you are going to pull on the charging handle. This will allow you to remove the bolt carrier and the charging handle itself. Okay. Now the first thing you're going to want to do is clean the barrel. So I'm going to take some rim oil and spray your wire brush with the rim oil. Be careful as you insert it into the rifle. Get it started into the barrel, and then gently push it through the barrel. Now, as you do this, because of the rifling, the cleaning rod and brush are going to want to turn. Don't stop this. Let it turn. Now, when the brush comes through the other side, do not pull it back through the barrel. Main reason for this, a lot of people think it can damage the rifling, but I think the main reason is because this lip right here can catch on the barrel crown and damage your barrel crown, or scrape on the sides of the barrel as you pour it through, and that can damage your barrel. So this is a very tedious process, but you want to remove the head and carefully pull the rod back through the barrel. And put the brush back onto the cleaning rod and repeat. And you're going to want to do this, well, it depends on how dirty your barrel is. If you clean your rifle regularly, then 10 or 20 times should be fine. But if you go quite a ways in between cleaning, then you may need to do this, 50 or plus times. So okay, now we're ready to swab out the barrel. Now, again, I'm using the 22 caliber swab mop, whatever. You're going to spray, some people will spray Rem oil right down into the barrel itself, but I'm going to start off, I just spray the mop itself with, a decent amount. You don't want to get the interior of your barrel too wet. You just want a very light coating of oil on, the interior of the barrel. A lot of people think that it will affect accuracy if your barrel's too wet. So just give it a decent coating. Don't go crazy on it. Then, just like before, gently push it through the barrel. Now, because it's not a wire brush, you can turn it as you insert it down the barrel, and this is actually really good because it gets the barrel very clean. And again, because of that lip, you don't want to pull it back through. So remove the mop, and then gently pull the rod back through the rifle. Reattach the mop head. And repeat. Again, depending on how dirty your barrel is, how dirty your rifle is, will determine how many times you have to do this. And like I said, since my barrel is not too dirty, I just cleaned it. I'm not going to need to do this more than a few times. I like to have a very clean barrel. You don't want any kind of grit or anything into the barrel, so you do want to get it as clean as you can. But you also want to get that nice light coating of oil down through the barrel to prevent corrosion. Okay, now that the barrel's clean, you're going to want to clean out this area in here, because this is not a metallic upper. A lot of wear on the plastic in here, or the material. I try to prevent that wear as much as possible, so I do like to put a nice coating of oil on that. There's a lot of debate between how much oil to put in your gun. Most people say a very light coating, and then other people say the AR15 is a gun that likes to be ran wet. I don't know. I've did it both ways, and I don't really notice much of a change in accuracy. As long as your barrel, the interior of your barrel, isn't oversaturated with oil, I don't think it's going to be much of a problem. But for this, I'm going to be using M-Pro Gun Oil. And this oil works really good. It's a little bit more pricey than Armalite, But this oil, when I lubricate my rifle with it, it seems like every 2 weeks I have to re-lubricate it or the gun is dry. And with the M-Pro7 Gun Oil, I can lubricate it today, come back in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months from now. I actually don't know what the maximum amount of time is on this, but every time I do open the gun back up months down the road, it's still very lubricated. It looks like I had just lubricated it. So this is a really good oil. Also, I'm going to be using M-Pro7 Gun Cleaner. Now this is also pretty pricey. It's about $8 or $9 for this little bit. It's not really a very harsh cleaner. It's a very mild cleaner. But if you keep your rifle clean and clean it regularly, then this is probably the only real cleaner you're going to need. It's not as strong as some of the abrasive solutions out there and the foams, but you know, the abrasive cleaners can you know, eventually damage the gun and wear down on your parts and metal. So this works really good. Says right on the bottle that when you spray it and you let it set for a few minutes and then scrub the area. If you let it set more than that, it will dry and you'll have to repeat the process all over again. So, but this is really good. I find that it does clean the carbon and all that stuff out of the rifle pretty good. Now, you could go ahead and spray this into your barrel, if you know, beforehand, or spray it onto the mop head before you swab out your barrel, and that'll get it real clean. But like I said, my barrel is pretty smooth and pretty clean, so I didn't really need to do that. But what you're going to do for whatever you're going to clean with this is you spray it onto the part or the location, and then you're going to let that set for a few minutes. Obviously, I'm not going to let it set that long. You guys don't want to wait around for a few minutes, and then take whatever cotton swab or a brush. This is the nylon bristles. The only thing you really want to use the wire bristles for is really heavy buildup, because obviously it can scratch and damage your rifle, and the last thing I want to do is scratch my rifle. But like for this gas tube, it's got a lot of buildup on it. So after letting it set, it will help to release all that dirt and grime, and then you just scrub it. I find the solution works very well. After you do use the solution, you do want to make sure you get all of the solution out of whatever you had sprayed it on. The bolt carrier works really good on getting the bolt and bolt carrier very clean. So now, like I said, after you spray that, you want to remove as much of that as possible. Now I am going to lubricate it, so that's going to help get rid of whatever I don't get out. But the Q-tips work very well for getting into tight places, like this spot right on the sides and right underneath of the gas tube. That's hard to get with anything other than a Q-tip. So Q-tips are a necessity when it comes to detailing a rifle, and I like to keep my rifle squeaky clean. Obviously it's not squeaky clean at the moment. Gas tube does get pretty dirty and disgusting. Pipe cleaners are good for cleaning the gas tube. I'm not going to do that right now. Then after you clean your rifle, like I said, normally I'd put a thin layer of oil on my rifle, but because this is not a metallic upper and it's already starting to show some signs of, of wear from, just the friction of the bolt going back and forth, I try to keep a generous amount of oil on this inner surface to prolong the life of my upper as much as possible, because they are somewhat costly and it's a bit of a hassle to replace. So I want to prevent that as much as possible. So I'm going to apply your oil. Now you want to apply the oil on any surface, especially that has some signs of wear on it, because that's obviously where your bolt or other moving parts are riding on. It's plastic, well, a plastic material, so I'm not too concerned about corrosion, obviously. For that area on the very bottom, I find that a Q-tip works very well. That's usually where the charging handle is going to ride. And I usually put some oil on the charging handle anyway, but I do put a little bit of oil on the gas tube just to prevent any kind of corrosion. I actually don't know what kind of metal the gas tube is made out of, but just about any metal, given enough time, will corrode. Even gold. Although the effects of gold corrosion are not quite as devastating as with most other metals. Mainly right now, I just want to make sure I get all of that cleaning solution out. Now, when cleaning the chamber, they actually make patches, custom patches for the AR15 chamber. They kind of resemble a starburst pattern, and I've never used them. None of my stores around here carry them, but they would make cleaning your chamber out a lot easier. So if you can pick them up, that I would definitely suggest you do so. Now, this coiled spring on the ejection port, because it is a spring, it is metal, I will put a very light coating of oil on it. Very light. And then basically your upper receiver is finished for now. Next, I'm going to clean the charging handle, which doesn't get very dirty. It does have, residual oil from your last cleaning, and, gunpowder collect on the oil, so it will darken your oil. Q-tips work really good. A cloth, you can use a cloth to wipe this down, but I'm going to put a thin coating of oil on the charging handle, because you do pull the charging handle back, and it is not metallic. It's not made out of metal, so it will wear. And then there's a spring on the charging handle's release. There's a spring down in here, and quite often when the charging handle goes bad, that is the piece that goes bad on the charging handle. So to prevent weakening from corrosion, I will put a little bit of oil on that spring. and then depress the release a few times to kind of work that oil into the spring. And then when you put the charging handle back into the rifle, there is a notch inside of the rifle. Don't force the charging handle into that groove. Just slide it in gently with very light downward pressure, and the charging handle will fall into that notch, and then you can push it in. Set that aside for now. Okay, next we're going to be cleaning. We're going to lubricate the bolt. Now, when you clean the bolt, again, Q-tips work very well. You can see where right here on the bolt carrier. You want to definitely make sure you get these areas lubricated better than any of the other parts of the bolt carrier, because obviously this is what's rubbing on things. So for the most part, for most of the surface, when you clean it, a towel's going to work really well. Now, you can spray it with the M-Pro7 and set it aside for a few minutes and then give it a scrubbing. If you clean your rifle regularly, though, it shouldn't be that difficult. I'm not going to remove the bolt. Maybe in a later video I will remove the bolt and show you guys how to clean that and to put that back in. But because usually about once every few months, depending on how much I shoot the rifle, I'll remove the bolt every so often, and I'll give it a good cleaning. Now, the cotton swabs fit right into that gas tube really well. That gas key, I'm sorry. So the cotton swabs will fit right into that gas key almost perfectly, and you just want to make sure that you don't, you're careful that pieces, because if you get that cotton to come off that tip and it gets stuck in that gas key, which has happened to me, it's a pretty big pain to try to get it out. So you want to be careful. But those get, as you can see, that gets pretty dirty, pretty nasty. Pipe cleaners also will work well, but Q-tips work really good. Now, in here on the bolt, the bolt carrier gets pretty dirty and pretty nasty, especially the firing pin. The firing pin gets really disgusting, but we're not going to pull that out at the moment. Like I said, maybe in a later video. So after you get that cleaned up really well, it's actually pretty clean right now because I just cleaned it. But to lubricate it, you want to pull that out, pull the bolt out. I'm going to put a very light coating of oil and work it in. Now, in all these grooves on the bolt, I like to make sure I put oil in there, because there is some friction when it goes into the chamber and then locks into place. Now, if I pull the bolt out, then my oil procedure is a little different. But if I'm not pulling the bolt out, I'll put a layer of oil, a pretty decent layer of oil, right along this part of the bolt. And then I'll work the bolt in and out just to kind of get to work some of that oil in there. And then into this area. And like I said, if I break down the bolt carrier and I pull the bolt out and I'm going to lubricate it, then I do things a little bit differently. But for just a very basic lubrication, then this is how I'll do it. Now, after that, you're going to want to apply a thin layer of oil. Obviously, if you don't lubricate your gun and you don't fire your gun often, then that'll influence the amount of oil that you want to put on it. You don't want to let your rifle get dry. That's when corrosion wants to set in, and I've seen some pretty nasty rifles and some pretty nasty AK-47s that were neglected. Now, before you go too crazy, you're going to want to lubricate the interior. It is a metallic surface. There's not really a lot of movement in there, but it is a metallic surface, and you do want to try to protect it from corrosion and wear. So you want to get a nice thin layer of oil on the interior. Now, oil will collect dust, and it will collect, carbon and powder from, the gases and firing. So you definitely don't want to go overboard on it. But you do want to make sure that the entirety of the metal does have at least a thin coating of oil on it. Now, when I first got my rifle a few years back, I wanted to try to protect it from getting scuffed up, and I would go crazy on the oil. And like I said, some people say it affects your accuracy, but I honestly never noticed a difference. I find that the AR-15 was accurate regardless of how much oil I put on the bolt carrier. So, I'm not saying it's not true, I just haven't noticed it. Now those locations that had to wear, I'm saving for last, because I am going to heavily coat those areas, because obviously that's where a lot of the wear is on my bolt carrier. So I want to make sure that I get that well lubricated. Then after you have your bolt carrier and bolt lubricated, pull your charging handle out a little bit, and just to get this out of the way and so it doesn't collect any dust or hair or anything. Go ahead and put that back into the rifle. You pull the charging handle out just a little bit, and the gas key will fit right up into the slot of the charging handle. Once you get it in position, just push the bolt carrier back in, and it'll push them all in like that, and then set that aside. And then onto the lower receiver. Now, down in here you have the hammer, you have your disconnect, and your trigger. Right now it's cocked, and you don't want to dry fire your rifle. Now, in the receiver extension, you have the buffer spring, and the buffer tube itself goes back and forth, and there's a lot of movement in here. So I try to make sure that I have that lubricated. Now, unless I want to pull out the buffer spring and the buffer tube, which is a pain, about all I can do is just depress the buffer tube a little bit, throw some oil down in there, and then try to work the buffer tube a little bit to try to spread some of that oil down into the receiver extension and try to get it onto the spring. Now, most of these are usually made out of like a stainless steel, so you don't really have to worry too much about those corroding. Then you have a lot of springs and other parts down here in the trigger group, and of course, obviously, those are susceptible to corrosion. So you don't want to go overboard with the oil, because it will it will come out of the trigger, and it's just a pain. So just a few drops of oil down in there, and then you'll take just a cotton swab just to kind of move that oil around on all of the springs. Now you want to get all the springs. I mean, there's a good decent amount of springs down in there, and metallic surfaces, and you want to get those, get a nice coating of oil on all of those, as well as the disconnect. Again, made out of metal, so you want to get a thin coating of oil onto that as well. And then for the hammer itself, some people will, oil it and some people won't. Again, it's metal, and I don't really want it to corrode. It's a big piece of metal. It's not going to make much of a difference if it does, but I like to put a very thin layer of oil on it regardless. And that's it. So now you're going to, again, put the rifle back together. You start with the pivot pin. Push that in. And then takedown pin. And there you go. The internal parts of the rifle are cleaned and lubricated. Now you're going to go into the barrel. The exterior of the barrel anyway. Now, for this, I have a silicone cloth. Now, I like the silicone cloth because, at least it says, that it leaves a nice, shiny polish to your barrel. Not only that, now you only want to use this for the barrel, just the barrel, because eventually the cloth is going to retain some of that rim oil, and it helps. Now, I guess you could spray the rim oil directly onto the cloth, but I don't. What I do is I will spray the rim oil onto the barrel and then just work the cloth and work the oil around the barrel with the silicone cloth. And the cloth does a really good job. It really does get a nice shine onto that barrel. I don't like scuff marks. I don't like any kind of damage or dirt, or especially corrosion on the barrel. So, a silicone cloth, I definitely would suggest that you pick one up if you don't have one. They're good for any barrel and even stocks, because a lot of people like to use rim oil to clean their wooden stocks, and the silicone cloth seems to leave a nice polish on, whatever you use it on. But it works especially well for metallic barrels. Now, you have these grooves in here. If there's oil in those grooves, you just want to make sure you get that oil rubbed around. And then lastly, you want to clean the flash hider and just the interior of the flash hider, or your suppressor, or whatever you have on your rifle. Now, there's already a little bit of rim oil that I'm sure has seeped into that, but I'll take a cotton swab and I'll spray it with rim oil. Now, on the flash suppressors and hiders, these cracks build up with a lot of carbon and gunpowder, and they collect dirt, and it'll corrode if you don't make sure that that's oiled and cleaned. So the cotton swabs work really well for that. Also, the cotton swabs work pretty good for just getting around the interior of the flash hider. You just want to make sure that there's a thin layer of rem oil on that. And then that's also where a lot of a lot of carbon will build up, is right on the inside of the flash hider. And a lot of people neglect to clean that, as you can see. So, maybe I'll make another video of a more in-depth cleaning. Because obviously you can see my rifle isn't spotless. It's not dirty. I mean, it's not awful, but it's not as spotless as I prefer to clean it, to keep it. After you have that, obviously I don't have a wooden stock. It's some kind of a plastic polymer, makes it lightweight. Then you have rubber on your, your optics and stuff. And usually, you can use a little bit of rem oil on this. I see a lot of people do it. That's fine. Honestly, I like vinyl cleaner. I think vinyl cleaner does a really good job on this, especially on the buttstock and the pistol grip and the foregrip. So you might want to think about using a vinyl cleaner on those. Keeps it moist and protected from the sun. But I mean, I keep my gun in a gun case when I'm not using it, so the sun's not a problem. Now, if you do get a little too much oil, as you can see, the oil will start to seep out of holes and cracks in your rifle. Like, when I first got my gun, I used to over oil it, and I get a lot of oil coming down the trigger and coming out of the pivot and takedown pins. It's not a huge deal, just wipe it off. It's just, when the oil gets on the rifle, it kind of makes it look ugly. So, the quad rail, you don't really have to worry about keeping it lubricated. A lot of times I will use a little bit of rem oil and my silicone cloth to give that a nice cleaning. And the Q-tips are really good for the rails itself on the quad rail. And then vinyl cleaner if you have quad covers on your quad rail. Looks real nice, gives it a real nice shine to it. And then after it's cleaned, I just like to make sure that I have, everything's still working. And then, when I clean it, it's a good time to check the electronics, because I don't have any iron sights on the rifle. Unfortunately, I have to rely on optics, which have batteries. And, last thing you want is to need your rifle and find out that your batteries are dead. So, anytime I clean the rifle, I turn on and test all of my optics just to make sure that the batteries are still good in them. And if it looks like the batteries are starting to go, then I just go ahead and change them. I don't wait, because, if you need your rifle, you're not going to want to have to take the time to change out the batteries. And I do have a laser, so everything looks good. Like I said, maybe I'll do another video on a more detailed cleaning, and we'll take the bolt apart, the bolt carrier apart. Oops, a little too much oil in there. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys later.